It happened an age ago. The Elden Ring was broken. But by whom? And why?
Elden Ring is the latest game in the long-running Soulsborne series by From Software. Previously, these games were known to have a niche audience due to their extreme difficulty. Since Elden Ring was announced, there has been a never-ending amount of hype surrounding it, and when the game did come out, it became one of the highest-rated games of all time. Unfortunately, I don't really agree with the critics. I personally don't think that Elden Ring is one of the best games ever made. I believe that it is the best game ever made.
Inhabit a fractured world, awaiting the arrival of the Elden Ring. Unless, of course, thou shouldst take the crown.
Last year I decided to try a little game on sale for $10 called Bloodborne, and I expected it to please me for maybe a few days. Today is my second favorite game of all time, with Elden Ring now being my first. After Bloodborne, I really decided to jump into the Souls series with Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. Okay, I know that's not a lot, but I had other games I gotta play, and one of those games was Elden Ring, because this game is massive. My first playthrough took me almost 80 hours to get through, and that is considered quick. For those of you who don't know, Elden Ring is From Software's first attempt at an open world game. Despite having no experience whatsoever with the genre, they literally were able to perfect it, and I wouldn't be surprised if you had thought FromSoft had been making open world games for years and years now. That's due to a few reasons. Nowadays, when you think of open world games, you think of the market-tested, safe Assassin's Creeds and Far Cry's. Every game boasts how massive their open world is and how long it takes you to zoom out on the map screen. This is so you feel like you're getting your money's worth, even if the open world has nothing but an empty wasteland and boring content. Elden Ring is nothing of the sort. This game feels so large because whenever you turn around a corner or look under a bridge, you'll usually find some new dungeon or boss fight. Take for example this sequence. You can just be strolling upon a peaceful lake and then all of a sudden, situations like this happened all of the time. Some of the coolest, most amazing stuff, and this is usually hidden behind some random rock or behind a door that you have to find 4 random items to open. Usually open world games are cluttered with objective markers, hints, and hand-holding. Elden Ring doesn't have a single quest marker. Elden Ring doesn't have a single quest marker. You have to go and find stuff for yourself, or you can look it up, because frankly, that's what these games are built around. Souls games have always been built around the community. Want to find the best armor in a game? Look it up, it's probably hidden in some really weird spot anyways. What's a good weapon for my magic? What's a good place to farm souls? How do I achieve Made in Full? How do I beat this boss? Don't worry, you're going to be asking yourself these questions a lot. Elden Ring still has a signature Dark Souls difficulty. It took me about 8 hours to beat the first boss, though majority of that has been me just exploring. Elden Ring is probably the most newcomer-friendly Souls game though. The bosses are tough and the hardest I've ever fought in the series, but there isn't really any of what I call BS. One such example was in Bloodborne, where in order to get to a boss you had to do an extremely long run back to get to him. If you die, which believe me, I did, you had to do it over and over again. Not even talking about the Bed of Chaos from Dark Souls, which is 3 times as long and it would just one-shot you instantly. In the old games, let's say you're really far underground with a ton of souls but cannot find a checkpoint anywhere, and you're all out of heals. Usually you get hit by some dumb sniper enemy far away and lose all your souls. Elden Ring is extremely generous with how frequent its checkpoints are. Now you can just fast travel and keep all your souls. I made a video about whether or not Soulsborne games should have an easy mode, and I still stand by my opinion to this day. But I do believe that removing a lot of the frustrating parts of Souls games and upping the difficulty is a good change. At this point though, Elden Ring pretty much has an easy mode. There are so many early game weapons that completely break the game, it is nuts. There are so many great videos online that will help you get all of the best items for whatever playstyle you want. Trust me, if you want to use any type of weapon, just picture it and it's in the game. I keep finding all of these cool weapons, but you can't use them because they're too far in the game. But that's where the beauty of Souls games come from. The second after I beat my first playthrough, I started a new one because I wanted to use Guts' sword so bad. And I decided to use a gravity and frost combination, so when I pull all of my enemies in, I can freeze them to finish them off with my 7-foot long sword. Oh my gosh, the bosses in this game are amazing. I'm not going to show you any here for the sake of spoilers, but there is some awesome stuff when it comes to bosses in this game too. After all, there are over 226 bosses that you can fight, and only like 12 of them are mandatory. The story in this game is amazing also. The marketing point for Elden Ring was that George R.R. Martin, writer of the A Song of Ice and Fire book series, which would go on to be later adapted into a small TV show called Game of Thrones, was helping out with Elden Ring. Beforehand, Hidetaka Miyazaki, the creator of the Souls games, would be the sole writer, and he and George teaming up seemed like the dream team, and it was. Elden Ring's story is very, very different from any of the other Souls games. A good example is the soundtrack of each game. Take a listen. Dark Souls and Bloodborne both take place in worlds where there is no hope. It's populated with nothing but beasts that want to kill you. You might find some normal people, but they don't really stick around for very long. Here's Elden Ring's thing. I know it's a song that you heard at the start of the video, but it's just such a stark contrast to other Souls games. Elden Ring is probably the most accessible Souls game in terms of story as well. The Souls games don't tell their stories through traditional means. You have to piece pretty much every single little detail together in order to understand everything. Usually it isn't years until after a Souls game is released that we find every single detail, and we usually don't because the game leaves a lot of room for interpretation or theories. Usually it's best to just watch a YouTube video explaining everything. Elden Ring has a lot of this, but the basic elements are usually pretty easy to pick up. You're a tarnished thrown out by a greater will. The Elden Ring, the one thing that held the world together, was shattered. It's your job to fix it and become Elden Lord. There's a lot, and I mean a lot more story than this, but if you pay attention, you should be able to pick all the basics up. I haven't even talked about the combat yet. Elden Ring's combat is the very best combat in a Souls game, and the best combat in any video game ever. It's already amazing, but From Software piled up everything they learned and just put it into one place. There are some new additions to combat like Ashes of War, which are abilities you can apply to your weapons, even if some of them don't use your weapons. Guard counters are a new way to stagger enemies, but I didn't really use it that much because I ran dual katanas, though from what I've heard, it's a welcome addition. Another thing that was made easier was the multiplayer. Souls games multiplayer has always been strange. It usually requires you to obtain an item or a few items before you can actually do it. Then you have to use that item to summon people to help you out, or you can go to their world and help them. You can also go to their worlds to fight them with PvP, and invade their world when they don't expect it. Honestly, it's always been pretty cool, but a pain since you have to use a certain item that is limited to summon people. Elden Ring is very much the same, but the item you need is pretty common and is purchasable in the store, so it's much more convenient. Multiplayer items have their own menu now, and it will tell you what each item does. Messages are much easier to use now. For those of you who don't know what messages are in Souls games, it's where you leave a message for other people to see. They also have their own dedicated place in the menu. You want to know the best part of this game? No microtransactions, no game-breaking bugs, and no level gating. This is a complete package for $60 with no strings attached. From Software values your time and money just as they always have. All these reasons listed above barely scratch the surface and why Elden Ring is the best game ever made without getting into spoilers. If you don't trust me, trust the 12 million people who have bought the game in just 3 weeks. Trust the people who made this one of the highest played games of all time on Steam. Trust the critics who made it one of the highest rated games of all time. I also believe that Elden Ring will be one of the most influential games ever made, and I will be very surprised if companies continue to make open world games the same way. I was going to make a review of Elden Ring, but there's no reason to dance around the score. I have no complaints whatsoever of Elden Ring, so the score is a 10 out of 10. But honestly, I wish I could give it 11 out of 10 because I don't think I will ever play a game like this again in my life. And if you haven't played Elden Ring, please go do so. Trust me, you will thank me later.